I recently read a story about King Hezekiah in 2 Kings chapter 18 that kind of brought me up short. I've taught the passage many times before. I'm not sure why I didn't see this previously to this encounter with the text. It says that King Hezekiah honored the Lord, that God was pleased with him more than any king before him or any king after him. He had gone through the land and he had cleaned out the high places of their altars and idols. And he had done something, and this is what surprised me. He had taken the bronze serpent that Moses had made 700 years before, and he broke it into pieces because the people were burning incense to it and called it Nehushtan. I've taught on the passage before. I don't know why it never really occurred to me that he's commended for breaking something that comes from their past that had been used for a godly purpose. You'll remember the story. The people of Israel were complaining, and God sent poisonous serpents among them to afflict them, and apparently some people were dying. And so God told Moses to make a bronze serpent, to put it up on a pole, and anyone who looked at it, if they had been bitten by one of these serpents, would live. They would be delivered from the affliction that was caused by the serpent bites. And of course, we know that that's meant to be a picture of Christ, the serpent, of course, being cursed, bronze being a picture of judgment. The bronze serpent then lifted up on a pole, it's a picture of Christ. I mean, even Jesus, speaks of that in the Gospels, that as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so I will be lifted up. And so we know that all of that was meant to point to Christ, and that's why this is even more troubling to me, that Hezekiah, who receives this accolade from God for what he did, broke that bronze serpent, this thing that had been used by God in the past to be even a picture of the cross of Christ. And now Hezekiah is taking this sacred relic and he's breaking it in pieces, and he's commended for it. And it got me wondering about what the application might be for us, because we know that all of these stories are written for our admonition and that we would learn from them. So what's the parallel for us today? And it got me to thinking about how something that has been used by God in the past, even commanded by him in the past, can come to a place where it is no longer being used by the Lord for a redemptive purpose. It has become a barrier. It has become something that is keeping people from the way of God. And I wonder if in my tradition, the application for that isn't something quite specific, and I'm going to share it, but before I do, I need to make this statement first. I am cautious. I need to be understood that what I'm saying is not that we would utterly neglect nor turn away from this practice that I'm about to share, because I absolutely believe that it is essential and important. But I wonder if we haven't distorted this principle of ministry and we've turned it into a bronze serpent, and it has gotten actually in the way of what our real mandate ought to be as a church, the church, local churches. And it is this: teaching the Bible. Now, I hope that before you just turn this off or throw your hands up in disgust because you're absolutely convinced that the teaching of the Bible is what we should be doing, please hear me. I agree. I'm simply saying that I think it behooves us to remember that when Jesus left, he told the disciples to go and make disciples of all nations. He did not say, go and teach the Bible verse by verse, chapter by chapter, book by book, from Genesis to Revelation. Is teaching the Bible expositionally part of the process of making disciples? Yes, but our overall mandate is to make disciples. And I think that if we become reductionistic and think that simply by teaching the Bible, disciples will be made, we are making a huge mistake. Discipleship is more than Bible teaching. I'm sharing this from a church tradition, Calvary Chapel, that I've heard some of my elder pastors and some of those that are leaders of our movement will say, I've said it. So I'm not criticizing them. I'm saying this is a value that has been passed on to us, and I've heard it said, if you teach it, they will come. I think it was on a t-shirt at one time even. If you teach it, they will come. And Calvary Chapel has this reputation for being a place that you go to learn the Bible. That's typical of our church here in our community. I've taught through the Bible 4 times. We're closing in on completing a 5th time through the Bible in the 41 years that I've been serving as the lead pastor here. I'm going to continue to teach the Bible verse by verse. It is the center of our ministry. But I'm concerned that we have moved into a mentality after all these years that assumes that if we teach the Bible, we've done what we need to do and we leave it at that. There is much more to making disciples than teaching the Bible. If making disciples was reduced to that, then Jesus would have sat down and taught the Bible to the disciples for 3 years and then left. He didn't do that. He went around, he showed them what the Bible looks like when it's lived out. He made disciples. He didn't just teach the Bible. He didn't give Bible studies. He gave those, yes. But then he showed what it means to live that out. He instructed them on the ways of God. He showed them what the Scripture looks like when it frames our speech, when it dictates our actions, when it carries us to places that need to encounter the reality of God's truth and grace. We live out the gospel. We don't just teach it. We don't just speak it. We teach it with words and we teach it with actions. And I'm concerned that there are those that have been given the impression that if you teach it, they will come. Meaning, just teach the Bible. And we heard that. Simply teach the Bible simply. That's true. We need to simply teach the Bible simply, but that isn't all there is to being a pastor. A pastor is a shepherd of the flock who leads, feeds, and protects the flock of God. That's the responsibility of a pastor. On these musings of a SoCal pastor, it's my pastoral heart that I want to share. And these unscripted dialogues and sharing, trying to distill what 41 years of ministry have taught me. And so here I am, 41 years in, reading a passage of Scripture I've read and taught many times before, and realizing there's another layer here that I'd missed. Hezekiah took something that had been used by God to save people, and he broke it into pieces because it had been made by the people into something else. Teaching the Bible expositionally, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, book by book, through the entire Bible is important, but to the end that we use it as a tool to make disciples of Jesus. And doing that involves a lot more than teaching the Bible in a pulpit and Bible studies. It means making sure that word has taken root in our hearts as pastors and we are living it out, and then living with people, bringing people alongside of us as we live that out. That's how Jesus made his disciples, and it's the pattern for our discipleship. We need to be pouring not just the words into people, but the word as it's been distilled through our lives. Again, I hope I'm not misunderstood. I hope that there aren't people that think that I'm now saying we shouldn't be teaching the Bible. We need to be teaching the Bible. What I'm saying is we need to be teaching it not only in our words, but with our lives.